So you've been watching some anime, or you recently came back from your trip to Japan that you can't stop raving about, and you've got this thought in your mind of, I want to live in Japan. Now the question is, how do you go about doing that, and what are your options? Well, there are a couple of pathways to being able to work and live in Japan, and one of the more common ones that you'll hear is to teach English in Japan. And if you were to go that route, you kind of have two options. You can either work for a private company, or you can choose to apply for the JET program, which is what I did. Me personally, I wouldn't recommend the private company, typically because the pay is usually not as high and there are less benefits and support available to you. In comparison with the JET program, it's a Japanese government sponsored program, so they have all of the support, community, and regulations and rules in place to protect you as you come and work in Japan. The JET program is a Japanese-sponsored program inviting new graduates from all around the world to come and participate in being either an assistant English teacher to their own Japanese teachers teaching English, or as a CIR, which stands for Coordinator of International Relations. For those ones, I'm not as familiar with it, but the one that I applied for was the ALT position, the Assistant Language Teacher position. That being said, with the types of responsibilities I was given at my workplace, I don't really identify fully as an assistant. At that point, I feel like I'm quite an English teacher, which I'll get into in a minute. But that's it in a nutshell. You can look it up more in detail. You'll often hear that many of the popular YouTubers that you may know, such as Chris Broad in Japan or Dogen, all got their foot in the door to working and living in Japan through the JET program, and then from there get to pursue their careers in other avenues. Typically, if you want to work and live in Japan, but maybe you don't want to teach English, sometimes teaching English is the good stepping stone. Once you're already in the country, it is easier to apply for other jobs while you're in the country than if you were abroad in another country. That being said, like I mentioned earlier, there's actually quite a number of pathways. You literally don't have to take the teaching English one, but that is the topic of today's video, and that is the expertise of my own personal experience. So for some context, I had actually applied to the JET program sometime in late 2019, did the interview in 2020, got accepted for 2020, but you know what happened in 2020. And as a result, the JET program gave me two options. Either I can wait indefinitely until borders open randomly and then they just kind of like sneak us and smuggle us into the country, or I could defer to start in the next term with the next year. I decided to go with the next term the next year in 2021 when things were a bit more settled. And once I was there, I was placed in a suburbs in Nara. I was going to be the first ALT of a public elementary school in a cute little town, and I absolutely loved this placement. Most of Nara was actually a bit of more of a countryside, inaka, but for me, I was in the suburbs where half of it was kind of countryside and then the other half of it was very urban, and there's a lot of train stations so that I can have easy access to Nara City or Osaka or Kyoto or wherever I wanted to go in the Kansai region. So that was really great for like my personal life outside of work. But in regards to work, at this elementary school, I absolutely loved my job. During the interview, they pretty much asked me like if I had a preference, and for me personally, I preferred elementary school, and I was so glad that I was able to teach it. And believe it or not, I was actually one of the first ALTs to this public elementary school, and the reason why was because I think somewhere around 2020, 2021 or so, the Japanese government, the Department for Education decided to expand on their required education. Instead of English becoming a required subject to teach starting from junior high school, they decided to make it an educational requirement starting from the 5th grade. And as a result, I got to design my responsibilities in the school. It was kind of free for all, and even my fellow coworkers or principal didn't quite know what my responsibilities were. They just knew that I would be accompanying a lot of the teachers in assisting with teaching English, whether it be more involved or less involved. And if you know me personally, I really enjoy working, and I would hate it if I was completely bored. So I found a lot of ways to make this job very enjoyable for myself. As much as I would wish to make this entertaining and spilling some crazy tea and crazy stories about my work life in Japan, honestly, it was a really enjoyable experience. I don't have any complaints, and I'm pretty much be talking about what I was doing, what my responsibilities were, what the workday looked like, how I was able to integrate in my Japanese workplace and get along with my Japanese coworkers, the cool experiences I got to have culturally, and almost living the life like some kind of slice of life anime. And then kind of going over a bit if there's anything I regretted, why I decided to leave, and then maybe if this is a good option for you. And I hope that by sharing my experiences, you can have a better picture of maybe if it's possible to be deciding to choose to work in Japan, or maybe you can go a different route. I know many of my friends in Tokyo do things like consulting, business consulting, software engineering, they work in the space industry, and they also work in IT, and the list goes on really. So for some context, at this public elementary school, I was teaching first grade to sixth grade. There was about 350 students in the school. I was only assigned to one school. With the JET program, there's a common phrase called ESID, which means every situation is different. And the way it works is that when you're assigned to either a school or a town or a district to teach, it's kind of similar to being assigned to work at a company, right? Every company works differently. Some of them have great managers or great bosses, and others have terrible leadership, or some overwork you to death and some are really relaxed. And it also depends where you're placed in the country. You don't really have a full say of where you're placed, so you got to make do with what you can. And that's why with the JET program, they really emphasize you having both an open mindset and a very adaptable mindset, and who's also quite proactive and go-getter and optimism. And maybe that's why you have me smiling all the time. But luckily, I'm glad that they probably saw it in me in the interviews, and that's where we're at. I know some ALTs that are assigned to multiple schools and they have to travel to the different ones depending on the day of the week. But in my case, I was in one school, which is really great because it gave me a lot of chance and a lot of opportunities to build rapport with a lot of my coworkers and get really close with them, and also really close to the students as well. I taught about 14 lessons a week, which is honestly very low. I had a lot of free time, but during that free time, I was either working on prepping for these different lessons, and especially with children, you want to develop a lot of hands-on tangible activities for them or fun presentation games that they can play in class. So there was a lot of that prep as well. That being said, during the extra free time I had, I discovered the special needs classroom, and so I would stop by there sometimes because the special needs teacher actually spoke really good English. There wasn't many coworkers that spoke English at the school. I think I can count on one hand, but that didn't really stop me from making friends with all the other coworkers with my broken Japanese. And I think one of the nice things about working with teachers is that they're really patient when you're learning to speak a language, and they're very encouraging. So that was nice that I don't think they got too annoyed with that, I would like to believe. And I also realized that there were some students where their health wasn't as good, so they'd often spend a lot of time in the school infirmary instead of in class. They would end up missing some of our English classes. So what I would do is go down to the school infirmary and then also tutor any of the students in the infirmary, tutoring them with English. And then from there, the most lovely thing about the Japanese education system, especially at the elementary school level, is they really prioritize the holistic development of the child in their earlier stages, in their earlier years. And that includes creating beautiful childhood memories. That includes making sure that the students develop a deep relationship with their teachers, because we do spend a lot of hours together with them every day at school for them to trust us and things like that. And one of the interesting values of the Japanese culture I noticed is that raising children is not just the responsibility of the parent, it is the responsibility of the teachers, the staff of the school, and in general any of the adults in town. That's why sometimes in town, if there is some children acting out, one of the older grandmas or grandpas will call them out on it, because it is all our collective responsibility to raise the future of the country, I suppose. And because of that, my principal and vice principal really encouraged me to be able to participate in a lot of these students' other lessons, even though I wasn't teaching them English. So something I would do is I would go up to their homeroom teacher or I would go up to the PE teacher and asking them like, hey, is it all right if I join the class? And they'll be like, yeah, of course. And the children absolutely love it to be able to spend quality time because it's their chance to get back at their English teacher and maybe play some dodgeball and get me out. They get so much satisfaction out of it, and it is honestly completely adorable to be able to spend times with these children. So that's what I did. Played with the children during PE time, and we also as teachers have to watch the children during recess time. I also got to participate in supervising some of their club activities and helping out with those. So you're very integrated in the children's lives. And an important note about the JET program is that it's not actually about teaching English, as it is more about a grassroots initiative to introduce the general public to a lot of international exchange, and so that's why children will be able to get to ask me a lot of questions about what it's like living in the US, and also to try to explain why do I look so Asian, and I don't look like some blonde hair, blue-eyed guy. And not only that, how I wanted to build rapport with a lot of my coworkers despite the language barrier is to learn basic phrases, asking them, hey, can I help you with anything, and things like that, or helping them supervise the kids or participate in an activity that they're hosting in their class. It's like, it almost feels like it's really fun because you have so many crossover episodes where your teacher from a different subject joins you for like another subject in class, and the kids are like, what? Why? Like what? How? So I think that's really fun. And the lovely thing about it is that my principal and vice principal and the staff all treated me as part of the team, a part of the office. Despite my low level of Japanese, they also invited me to come to the teachers' meetings where we discuss things about like how to raise the children and things like that, and also what we need to get done and what we need to prepare for different festivals and stuff. So I really helped out a lot in preparations for different school events, and it was just a wholesome experience all around. And the way lessons generally ran was that for 5th and 6th graders, I taught them twice a week. For 3rd and 4th graders, I taught them once a week. And then for 1st and 2nd graders, I taught them once a month. From 1st grade to 4th grade, English is an extracurricular activity. And what was important to me was just making sure that the children had a lot of fun learning English, that they had positive associations with the language, so that hopefully that can carry them through into the future, because by the time they hit 5th or 6th grade, now that English has become an educational requirement, they are now being tested on English, which it's really unfortunate to say, but that's where they start developing their anxieties towards English, and English becomes more like a subject to be tested and not a skill or a tool to just have fun with and make mistakes with as a focus on communication. So I don't really agree with that, but there's only so much I can do because I'm not the one running the show. But I did the best I could with trying to make sure English was fun wherever we could incorporate that into our lessons, whether we make it more interactive or we add some fun games. And a lot of the kids did have fun. I'm very proud to say that there are some students who came up to me and said that they really love English thanks to me and the other JTE, that when we were brainstorming the different lesson plans, and that made me very happy. And the crazy thing is I don't really identify so much as an assistant English teacher. I think for the 5th and 6th grade, I felt more like a co-teacher because we were just very involved in teaching the children. For 1st through 4th grade, I was essentially teaching English with the homeroom teachers. But the thing is, there was quite a lot of confusion about my responsibilities. Some of the teachers assumed that I was just straight up the English teacher, and others just gave it to me to be the English teacher. So I essentially had to create the lesson plans and execute on the plans, teaching the kids in the whole class. In the beginning, it was a little bit of trial by fire, but luckily prior to me going to Japan, I think online I decided to get a TEFL certification, teaching English as a foreign language, so that I have a better framework of teaching the language. So it wasn't really a problem to design lesson plans and to be able to teach class. I had a lot of informal experience too, teaching in the past. So there was some homeroom teachers where they would just kind of be there to make sure the kids weren't crazy or rowdy, and I was just kind of like running the class. That's all I was really doing, and giving the kids assignments and things like that. I would say a lot of things in English, and the way you do it with elementary school is that you want to say the phrase in English, but you want to gesture a lot. Like, everyone close your books, take out your pen, everyone your red pen. This is how you do it. To get them into that immersion mindset. But if something was really, really confusing, I would try to say like maybe 1 or 2 Japanese words at most, depending on their level. And especially with the first and second graders, they definitely needed a lot more help. So I think that one I used as much Japanese as I could to be communicating things, because they're just learning straight up the ABCs and the weather and colors and just playing games related to that. And those teachers were more in the older generation, so they had no clue about English. They left it to me to do it. In comparison to the 3rd and 4th grade teachers, some of them are more of new teachers, and I think in the new curriculum of how they're teaching the teachers in Japan is to be able to know some of the English and to be creative in how they want to teach English. So they were a lot more proficient in meeting me halfway and trying to make it work. But sometimes depending on their workload level, they were too busy to try to create a lesson plan for English, and so I would offer to kind of step in and help them with that. So I would create the lesson plan and the materials, and I would meet up with them once a week to talk with them like, hey, does this work? Is this what you're looking into? And this is how we can tag team this lesson while we're teaching the kids. One of the many things I've observed with the way they raise and teach children in the elementary schools, at least for this particular one, for example, they usually approach the child's education from a holistic standpoint. It's why they have home economics, teaching the kids, even the elementary school 5th and 6th graders, learning how to sew a bag or sew an apron, because the idea is they'll be able to know how to do the basics of sewing in case they need to fix up their own clothes as they get older. And they also learn how to clean, and every grade they kind of increase the type of responsibility that they give to the children. And you realize that I don't quite agree with the phrase where they say like, oh, just let kids be kids and just let them play all the time, because a child's natural inclination is that they want to grow up, and they want to have these responsibilities, because responsibilities means it's a part of growing up, right? So you'll see this with, for example, children who want to walk, or maybe around when you're 3 or 4 years old, you suddenly tell your mom like, hey, I want to change my own clothes, I want to put on my own shoes. That's that sign for autonomy and decision making, independence, which I think is so beautiful. And so you see that integrated in the elementary school education system, where let's say the 1st graders, we have some chance to clean, they do a terrible job at cleaning, they look really cute though, and usually afterwards the teachers kind of have to help clean the rest. But it's a good start, right? And by the time you're in maybe 4th grade, you're like, hey, you're in charge of feeding the fish. Or by the time you're in 5th grade, 6th grade, the 5th and 6th graders actually have to help the 1st and 2nd graders cleaning as well. So it's that type of feeling where, hey, you want to be a big sister role model to these younger ones, right? So teach them, show them how the cleaning is done. And not only that, they also have moral education. That one's kind of iffy. I wouldn't know how that would be applied in the US, because every family and every cultural background has their own perceptions of morality and ethics. But in Japan, that's what they do. They usually pose a question or a situation to the children and say, hey, do you think what this person did in this story was right or wrong? I guess we do have that in the US. We usually incorporate it in reading and reading comprehension time, asking that type of question. But I guess for moral education, it's kind of the one that really promotes the idea of like, don't steal, don't cut lines, make sure to be considerate of others and clean up because it's right, because it's wrong. You could argue it's indoctrinating a group of people into a specific set of like social rules, but hey, as you can see, when you arrive in Japan, it works really well. There's a reason why the country is so clean and so safe, with like you could drop your wallet and it'll still be there, or everything will be taken to the lost and found. And then for lunchtime, a lot of the food is either cooked within the school or it's cooked in a neighboring school with a bigger kitchen, and then it is shipped over to our elementary school. For us, that was the case. It was shipped over, and then usually a lot of the foods come from local areas, and during lunchtime they would have an announcement on the speaker going over what the lunch of the day is and where these ingredients are from. It helps ground the children in understanding where their food is from and what different areas of their country are known for. That's why sometimes if you tell them like, oh, so-and-so prefecture, they'll be like, oh yeah, the prefecture with the best potatoes or something. I think that's where it comes from. And I don't know if it's because my school is kind of in the countryside or if it's part of all of the educational curriculums, but my school had a lot of old agricultural tools in order to show the children of what old farming used to be like, to educate them on it, and then to show them and to like even use the tools, for example, to separate rice from the branches and things like that. So that was really fun to do. We also had little walking field trips to the nearby farms where the kids got to pick potatoes. And how they did this was that they would pair up the sixth graders with the first graders. And so they would tell the sixth graders, hey, you need to be a responsible big brother, big sister. Hold hands with the little first grader that you are paired up with as we all walk all the way to the farm. And of course, the little kids, we just tell them, hey, hold big brother or big sister's hand. And there's this kind of community connection between the different ages, to that you have to take care of the person who's younger and things like that, you know. And because you're older, you should be more responsible. Of course, there's pros and cons to this hierarchical system, but it was very cute seeing that happen, and I can see where it can work really well in some instances. And then for our particular school with the special needs students, they have a regular homeroom that they're assigned to, and the idea is that they wanted to expose these special needs kids to as close to a normal life as every other kid is getting in the school. But they also have a support teacher, a support staff with them, and if they were to get very disruptive in class, we then pull them out of class and they will chill out or relax in the special needs classroom where they can relax, collect themselves, and then the special needs staff will be teaching them whatever part of the curriculum they need to catch up on. One of the interesting things that my school did is that it was also important to have the other students be able to interact with the special needs student and to explain to them how the special needs student interacts with why they interact the way that they do. And I felt like that helped open the students' minds a lot better to be more empathetic. And most of the time, like, the students absolutely love the special needs child in their class. It was very beautiful to see. They always did their best to include the special needs student and hang out with them and things like that. So I know maybe that's not the case for other schools, because I was talking to a couple of other ALTs from different schools, and it seemed like for them, some of the special needs kids were really kept separately. And not only that, I don't know if this only works well in the elementary school level, because you do hear of cases of like junior high or high school where students are a bit more ostracized as a result, which I don't know what to make of it. But that's just how it was at the school that I was at. And my workplace was super warm. I couldn't have asked for a better principal, better vice principal, co-workers. They were also warm and welcoming me, but it did not last, because since the population of Japan has been declining, what ends up happening is that our town had a couple of elementary schools, but the population of the student body was decreasing. So what this town decided to do was to build new buildings where it is the elementary schools and junior high schools combined together. As a result, in the following school year, we had a lot of change, a change of coworkers, a change of principal, a change of even the students. Luckily, many of my students from the old school came to this new school, but also half of another elementary school came to our new combined school as well. And so what ended up happening is that the elementary school division got really huge. I went from teaching 350 students to now 600 students in total. And I think the total student body of the school, including the junior high school, is around 1,000. And the school office, you know, we used to just be like 50 coworkers or so, and now we're like more than 100, maybe 150 teachers about there. That was an intense year with a lot of changes. I went from teaching 2 classes per grade to now 4 classes per grade. I was teaching about 22 lessons a week, which is a big jump from the 14 before. So definitely my time was really filled, but so much so to the point where, yes, there was those lessons, but you also need to take into account the time it takes to prep for lessons and also to grade paperwork. And so everyone was pretty overworked, to say the least. I had less time to tutor the other kids. I had less time to interact with other students in their different classrooms and get to know them better. I was really finishing one lesson and starting the next lesson that me and my JTE and the other teachers, I don't think we got to give the students as much attention as they deserved. Not only that, but our classroom sizes increased from like 25 students to now like 30 to 35 students. So it was a lot more difficult to manage. We were pretty much stretched thin. The difference was night and day, because in the old school it was super warm. All of the teachers, not even myself included, but all the teachers generally had some free time to help each other out, and our management was so great where my principals and vice principals would encourage teachers to not stay too late at the office. They were really trying to go against the Japanese overwork culture. They would even have this time on the board in the teacher's office saying, hey, this is the time that the last teacher left this office. We need to be better. I think it was like 6 p.m. And they were like, we need to be better. You guys should leave home earlier. Now, the thing is, some of these teachers are probably still taking their work home. At least there's no situation where, let's say, if your boss stays late, then you as a subordinate, even if you're done with your work, you have to stay until the boss leaves. And so then you have to pretend to look busy. And that's not helping anyone. You're not getting any good rest. You know, it's just kind of very counterproductive. And that was the beautiful thing about my first workplace at that elementary school, is that they really promoted rest. They promoted helping each other out and things like that. In comparison with the new school, the combined school, we had a change in leadership where the principal had more of a reputation of micromanaging and really sticking to a lot of the old styles that I was talking about. If the leader didn't leave, then you couldn't leave, and da-da-da-da-da. There's like an extra layer of unnecessary overwork and pressure to look busy when we didn't need to. And that was unfortunate. There was no warmth in that office, and it wasn't even me just saying that, because at the end of the second school year at this new school, there were teachers commenting that it's probably one of the coldest offices they've ever been to, because the school is so large that the teacher's office started to feel more like a corporate office. And because we were too big, everyone kind of started forming cliques, because there's only so many relationships you can juggle all at once. And even for things like nomikai, like going out for drinks, because this was still during the time of the Panini era, there was like a lot of these nomikais happened in like hush hush. And you don't know who was invited, who was not invited, and they'd be invited in groups of like small groups of these teachers who decided to plan these nomikais. It was a whole thing. It was such an interesting time. Yeah, so that happened for a year. We were trying to tell upper management and the Board of Education, like, hey, we're understaffed. We need more English teachers in the English department. We are letting you know a year in advance. And they told us, like, yeah, we're totally going to be looking for more English teachers to hire. Don't worry, you'll be fine. And they kind of like bait and switched my JTE, my teacher, because they actually bait and switched her twice. But for the purpose of this story, the second time was when they promised her that we were going to get another teacher. And then after she signed the contract to work again at this school, they then told her, JK, we don't have enough budget. But yeah, let that sink in. And this teacher, I knew her. Like when we weren't so stressed in the previous school, we got along really well. But by the time the second school happened and we were all overworked, she had more brain fog, she was more stressed, a little bit more snappy. And not only that, but she would actually fall asleep in the bath at night, like after work, which is really dangerous. And I'm just like... And she just spends the weekends resting to do it all over again. And it's unfortunate because I know she had dreams of like getting married and things like that. And then I asked her, do you have time or energy to date? And she's like, no. And I'm like, hopefully she doesn't stay in that situation forever. She does know that if things get really bad, she can just leave. I just don't know. Yeah, that's up to her to figure out. But for myself, things weren't looking good and there was just less and less of a reason to stay. The best way I could describe it was that me and my other ALT coworker who worked in the junior high school division, we were just talking about how with our current contracts and current situation, with the town and our life, our work life and the way we live in Japan, there's not a strong reason to stay anymore because again, like all of my connections to the workplace, a lot of in the second school year, they kind of left. The office was really cold. It was hard to get to know everyone. I was not supported by upper management. No one ever checked in. I did my best to become friends with a lot of my coworkers, which I still was, and I'm so glad that I was able to develop those relationships because that's really one of the main things I wanted to get out of my experience in Japan was I care a lot about the concept of slow travel, which is being very intentional, integrating into a community, getting to know the people, learning the language language so that I can better understand them and communicate with them. Because I think who it was, maybe it was like Gandhi saying something along the lines of, if you speak to someone in a language that they know, you speak to their mind. But if you speak to someone in the language of their mother tongue, you speak to their heart. And I think that really holds true. So I really enjoyed learning Japanese and then being able to use that and connecting closer and making friends with a lot of my coworkers and a lot of my Japanese friends outside of work. And not only that, but with this role, there's not really much of a path for promotion. So you would either continue doing this program for up to 1 year to like 5 years. You have the option up to 5 years. Or you can also do what many do, which is maybe you might move to Tokyo and get another job. You can either continue teaching English with a private company, hopefully a better one, or I remember there was an option for me to do some academic consulting in Tokyo because I went through a pretty prestigious university, so my background in that would actually help me with the academic consulting business. Or you can get another different job that exists. You can work at any company, you just have to apply and do all of that. But for myself, I think I got what I most wanted out of the experience. I got to integrate myself into community, develop a lot of lifelong relationships with locals, polish up my Japanese language skills, get to travel around Japan and experience all 4 seasons and more, develop a great friendship and get to meet so many people, so many foreigners from all around the world in the international community in Japan. And I think one of the greatest takeaways I got out of it is that because I got to meet so many people internationally who have decided to just take a leap and work and live in Japan, you have found that compared to at home, everyone there has a lot of unconventional life paths. And it's just so encouraging to see that it really teaches you and it helps you internalize a lot that anything is possible in this world if you put your mind to it. And sometimes you just gotta take that leap of faith. In comparison, when I come back home, usually when I grew up in the Bay Area or even my hometown, there's typically a timeline that you follow, a bit of the rat race or the typical timelines of like get married by this time, have a house by this size, have a mortgage at this time, which there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But at least to be able to conceive of the possibility, the idea that there's another way to live life and it's very unconventional and it's very messy, linear, not linear at all, and sometimes you don't even know what's going to happen next. But at the end of the day, you learn that everything's going to be fine because through the challenges that you face from living abroad, learning how to navigate the post office system, the banking system, the medical system, even with broken Japanese, and you end up gaining so much self-confidence, self-esteem, the ability that you can trust yourself that no matter what challenge that you're placed in front of, that you will be able to manage it and handle it and then move forward and move through it. Then I think that is the best thing that I would have ever gotten out of this experience, was the belief in myself that I could survive and get through whatever challenges I face my way. There's a lot of things in life where we're just going to be taking the risk, but I think it's going to be a worthy endeavor given that we only have one life in this world and our only purpose, at least from my understanding, is to experience living, to create meaning out of our lives. I don't think there is any more worthy endeavor than to figure out how you can best live your life most meaningfully and intentionally. With that being said, I actually do have a newsletter down below. Luckily, I have the second camera. The battery on my camera just died. That being said, I have a newsletter down below. If you also enjoy little talks about what it means to live life and some of the cute little lessons I've learned along the way, then please subscribe to my newsletter. In comparison to my videos where I'm more chatty, I feel like my newsletters are more reflective and thoughtful. And now for the question is, should you live in Japan? Well, obviously I can't answer that completely, but I've had a lot of talks with other people where for some of them, things that are holding them back is their really good career path that they're heading down right now. But if it's something where if you look deep down and most of the things that you're concerned about are things you can make work, and if you keep really thinking about living in Japan for quite a number of years and you just can't get the thought out of your mind, then I highly recommend trying to find a way to integrate even just a year of Japan into your life, whether it be now or it could also be later. It is definitely possible. There are many who have come before you and many who will come after you. And one of the hardest things is to wrap your head around the idea that moving to another country is not as scary as it was maybe like 10, 20 years ago, thanks to the internet, thanks to Google Translate, and thanks to Google Maps and things like that. And the the plethora of YouTube videos and plethora of blogs that help you navigate the system of another country, and the community that you can easily reach out to on the internet and then have these like local meetups with in any country is just completely, utterly amazing, that it is something that is more possible now than any other time in history. If you really think about doing it, I highly recommend you take a deep look in your life and see how you can make it work. Obviously, if you're a lot younger, in your 20s, it is easier to take the leap if you don't have a lot of responsibilities holding you to a certain place. But as you get older, there are still ways to make it work that I know people have done to make it work. It's just a matter of taking that leap of faith. Actually, once I arrived in Japan and like slept in my apartment and went to work, I was like, wow, this was a lot easier than I thought to get done. So it is a lot more possible than your brain can currently fathom. At some point, it's kind of like ripping a band-aid off and you just kind of go with it. And that's all. I wanted to create this video because prior to me moving to Japan, I had watched so many videos of videos like this of people talking about their own personal experiences, and I wanted to contribute to this infinite archive of people sharing their experiences as well. And in case you want to watch some more videos about my time in Japan, you can check out this one video up here going over the school lunches that I had and why they're nutritious, and then or you can watch this other video here. Anyway, thanks so much for watching and see you in the next video. Bye!